Croesos Wrexham News, and today we are going to be doing a recap on the Hafod landfill issue. I'm Councillor Carrie Harper.
I'm Councillor Marc Jones.
And we're going to be talking to Steve Gittens, who's quite a long time campaigner now, Steve. We've had you on before, haven't we?
Yes, it's gone on over 12 months now I've been involved.
It has. We need to do a quick recap for people who maybe aren't familiar with it. I know most people will be. Definitely if you live in Johnstown or Rwabon or the surrounding areas, you'll be really familiar with it. But this has been a long-running campaign, so getting on 20 years now.
Yeah.
We've been talking about the issue with Hafod landfill, and you know, the in a nutshell, basically, the stench from the place is driving people insane and has been for the last 2 decades now.
Yeah, sure.
And unfortunately, we're in a place where I think there's a lot of frustration from local residents that not enough is being done. The issues are ongoing. They're non-resolved. People are complaining, but still, there doesn't seem to be a solution in sight. So you've been working really hard to get the issue acknowledged a little bit higher up the food chain. So you were at the petitions committee last week, and we'll get to that as part of the discussion.
Okay.
But I thought it'd be a good place to start is to ask you how you personally got involved with this.
I've lived in Johnstown all my life, worked out of the area until I retired. Then when I retired, I was aware of the campaigns and everything going on in the background, and although I was aware of the stench occasionally, but I didn't really acknowledge it because I was not in the area. And then when I retired, I thought, wow, I mean, this is horrific. So I started making comments on the Facebook page against Hafod landfill, and I could see the strength of feeling. I could see the stress and the frustration and how these people were being dismissed by NRW, the council. So I thought, man, I got to get involved. So I started making comments. I was then encouraged to
make more comments.
Yeah, Nettie.
Yeah.
I was then encouraged to submit a petition to the Senate, and it's gone from there, really.
So that was last week.
Yes.
How did that go? Because it's the second time it's been discussed at the Senate Petitions Committee as well, isn't it?
Yeah, first of all, I was really grateful that they gave me an opportunity to respond to the part 1 of the inquiry where Team Unitt were producing their evidence.
And Unitt is the company that manage and run the landfill currently, isn't it?
And NRW, Public Health Wales, the council. I think that was it. So yeah, I was really grateful. They were extremely courteous with me, and I was allowed to make my points. I wish it had gone on a little bit further because there's stuff I didn't say, but that happens when you're in the heat of the moment and you're discussing certain topics. But yeah, it went well. I mean, the main thrust of my argument is the non-compliance of the exposure, the fumes from the Hafod landfill, and the monitoring system that's picked that up.
And that monitoring system has only been in place fairly recently, hasn't it?
From March.
From March.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been there before.
Yeah.
And can you explain to people what that has picked up?
Well, first of all, the council passed a full motion that they would implement these monitors. They would put tighter controls on Unitt and ask the NRW to become involved. The first report that was reported in the Homes and Environment Scrutiny Committee in April was really flawed because they'd used occupational exposure limits when we're talking about the public.
It's a village, it's a residential area. Yeah.
So I think shortly after that, and it says it in the report, Public Health Wales acknowledged that the World Health Organization thresholds are the way to go. They're the limits that we should use. Those monitors were put in. There's only one in our community, and there's 4 around the perimeter of the site. But even with one, the report does demonstrate, a company called Geotechnology have done it for Unitt. It does report the limits over the 1 part per billion and 5 parts per billion.
So now, what does that mean?
Okay, 1 part per billion is the point where the human nose can start to pick up this rotten smell. In fact, it's not 1 point per billion. It's been rounded up. It's 0.5. Some European countries go to 0.2, 0.3.
Okay.
So it is the point where it becomes a nuisance, and you can smell it. And then you go to 5 parts per billion, which then ramps up to all sorts of problems. I mean, certainly you get the throat irritation, eyes, coughs, lung problems. So those are the critical points of whether if you pass those emissions, and they did. The report showed, it was funny really, because they were very careful how they presented the report. The report said that they were 37% below 1 part per billion, where you can smell it. Great.
So 37% of the time they're
Means
below.
60%.
That means
Presumably.
well, it does. 63% of the time they were over, and the same for 5 parts per billion. Sorry, they were 66% below the threshold. Okay, fine.
But then by definition,
They were 34%
So
over.
a third of the time they were
A
all.
third of the time. And if you extrapolate that and put it into hours per day, 1 part per billion they were over 15 hours a day, and 5 parts per billion they were over by 8 hours a day.
Yeah, that's a big
Yes.
chunk of the day,
Oh, yeah.
isn't it?
But maybe people will see some of the correspondence that's gone back into me and the council. And what they're doing now is they don't like the 5 parts per billion and the 1 part per billion off the monitors. They don't think that they want to concentrate on that. What they're using is diffusion tube data.
Right.
Now, diffusion tubes are surrounding the.
what's a diffusion tube, Steve?
It's a device similar to the pods they put in, but its purpose is different. They were originally formatted to measure occupational workplace emissions.
Okay, and when did these diffusion tubes come into the conversation? Because this is new to me. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, I was aware of the diffusion tube thing because I mentioned that in my evidence to the Senate.
Yeah.
But it came out in the report that was issued by Geotechnology, and it has been. I have scrutinised it. I've looked into it. Can I just read a statement about diffusion tubes?
Yeah.
Okay. Diffusion tubes are fundamentally used for assessing long-term chronic health risks for occupational and workplace purposes associated with exposure to hydrogen sulfide. They achieve this by measuring an average concentration over extended periods, at least a month, sometimes more. However, by averaging the data, the tubes do not and cannot detect short, high concentration peak fluctuations of 1 part per billion and 5 part per billion that cause acute nuisance and immediate symptoms. Therefore, the diffusion tube data is clear on indicating low chronic health, but it is ambiguous, misleading and insufficient regarding the frequent acute odour nuisance raised by the 1 part, 5 part criteria.
Okay. So the problem is it's not what you want to measure.
No,
The impact on the community, is it?
If you're taking an average reading over a long time, let's say it's a month, but it can be longer than that, all that average reading does is flatten all the spikes. So it's no wonder Public Health Wales and I think the council are going to go, oh, it's low risk. It's not low risk. It's the wrong measurement. I mean, the council agreed they would put monitors in. Edinburgh agreed to put monitors in. And in the first 6-month results of the monitoring, it's been proved they've been non-compliant for at least 60% of the time.
So these diffusion tubes then, they brought as additional measurements?
They've already been there. It may be a standhead
Okay.
for every landfill site because they've never been. It's never been brought into the argument, so therefore I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
So when the report came out, the diffusion tubes, right? Okay, I'm going to look into that. So I've researched it. So I think they may be in many, if not all, landfill sites.
But they work for.
But they were workplace focused. I'm sure they'll argue, well, they'll do the same thing, but they don't. You know, if they're taking those results and flattening them as an average, you can't then go, well, that's what's happening in the surrounding areas.
But the other results from the community pod are pretty clear anyway, aren't
Well, yeah, I mean, in fact, it's interesting if you read the report, but they've got the other 4 pods around the perimeter, and they're all the same. So they're all exceeding it. But some of the figures that are reported in the table in the report go up 258 parts per billion. That's 13 times more than what they should be. And the one in the community, at its highest, the one in the community pod has gone as high as 29 parts per billion.
And what does that mean in real terms to the layman? What will that mean?
Well, that will mean severe health problems.
Yeah.
Well, if 5 parts
Severe.
per billion is irritated throat and eyes, and presumably those peaks of 29.
Yeah.
And if you're vulnerable as well, if you've got
Absolutely.
asthma, if you've got some kind of breathing disorder,
I mean, the range of effects it can have is massive, up to neurological problems, if it's that high.
yeah.
Okay, they're peaks, but it tells a story.
the thing is, even if it peaks the once and it causes those kind of problems, that's serious enough, I would say, to say whatever you're doing there, it's not working.
Absolutely.
And that would be my concern. If you're allowing those peaks to happen in your workplace, why is that happening?
Yeah.
And they don't seem to have an answer to that, do they?
No. I mean, hasn't it discredited their sniffer tests?
Well, yeah, where does the sniff test come into? They've got scientific monitoring data which shows something, and yet we're being told to say to accept that the sniff test is somehow valid as well.
Well, I mean, yeah, we've used sniff tests from day one, I suppose. I mean, I've also looked into that, and in 2003, the sniffer tests, or the olfactory panelists, as they call them, the people who do the sniff tests, need to be calibrated. The human nose needs to be calibrated, and these people should be tested against a butanol test. And every 2 years it should be updated, so that they're always right on it. Now, I would question, has that been done? And if so, I'd like to see the evidence. But in 2017, it was updated again. It says that after 2017, they have to use digital devices. They've got GPS, they're time-stamped, and they're non-tamper-proof. They're non-tamper. You can't tamper. So I would ask as well, have they been using those devices? Why not? They should be using best available techniques. It is the assurance now for regulating those type of fugitive emissions to use handheld devices.
So from your point of view then, Steve, what is going wrong? Is it the structure of the regulatory system itself that isn't working? And you've got Wrexham Council, we've got NRW in that, we've even got the Senedd now in that. But at the moment, we're still struggling to see an improvement on site. Is it the way things are being measured on site? People are using workplace thresholds when clearly they should be looking at it's a residential setting. It's just quite confusing, all of the layers that seem to mask not solving the problem. I'm just wondering what your take is on that.
Yeah, it is complicated, and I'm a layperson, but I've been very diligent in what I've researched, and for Mr. Hugh Jones, the lead member at the Protection Office, who has accused me in the press that I'm flawed and I'm misrepresenting it.
So this was an article that went out to the press, was it?
Last Friday.
Late last week.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I read that, and it did seem a little bit...
It was very dismissive. I think my problem with it is it was dismissing your evidence without countering it. And if you're saying you're not telling the truth, you've got stuff wrong, I think it's incumbent on whoever's saying that to explain what you've got wrong.
I have challenged him. I've written to him and said, can you be specific? Because once I know what he's accusing me of, I can answer that. And I'm confident all the stuff that I've presented to the Senedd and on the Facebook, to the community, to my response on Wrexham.com and the Leader are right. And I would love him to challenge me on it and see what he thinks is wrong. But it is complicated, and we haven't even touched upon all the other issues such as rainfall correlation. And senior members of Enervert and NRW are saying, no, what are you on about?
When it's wet, it smells more.
Well, it's
doesn't it?
It's the basic science of landfill. The rainfall increases the levels of leachate that permeates through the surface, and you get more hydrogen sulfide. But they claim they have no evidence that is right, and this correct. Again, my feelings are all of this is framed in such a way that the default seems to be let's keep it open regardless. And I think it's so wrong.
Well, I mean, the point is, for residents, this isn't a minor inconvenience. This is a major nuisance, sometimes several times a day when it's really bad, regularly, consistently. It has been for decades. So something is very wrong in terms of the way that site's being managed. To me, it's that simple, isn't it?
Well, the lived experience now, do you match what the report has said in terms of the exposure? It's there.
That's what I struggle to understand the criticism, really, because the figures that we saw when this came to the Homes Environment Committee showed there were breaches in terms of odour levels. What you're saying in terms of what you've submitted to the Senedd suggests the same. So clearly something's going wrong, but it seems at the moment nobody is willing to get to grips with it and actually do something about it.
Well, I hope the Senate committee will come to grips with it and take the evidence as it is. And I don't think you can argue against the data that's come off the pods. It's non-compliant.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to pray that the Senate committee will see that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the question then is, if you're non-compliant, if a factory's non-compliant in terms of health and safety, it gets shut down. If a school, if any kind of building is dangerous, it gets shut down. So to say that this place shouldn't be shut down despite being non-compliant on a regular basis, even by their own
Well, it had a warning
Lord,
November in 23.
Yeah.
And it hasn't got any better since then.
No. So that begs the question: then, in whose interests are we doing this?
Yeah.
And that worries me because it should always be people's health and safety and community comes first. And I really am concerned that what we're doing is making excuses for companies that are not following the rules.
Yeah.
It seems so heavily weighted in terms of sort of burden of proof, isn't it? If you're a resident in a situation like this, you've got so many, and fair play to you, Steve, for being
Absolutely
just like a dog with a bone with this, because this is what it needs, and it might make people uncomfortable having that level of scrutiny, but without that level of scrutiny, people aren't going to get anywhere. It's so weighted against them.
It is.
And that's what's so frustrating looking at this process, over 2 decades now, is, however bad it gets, nothing seems to happen. And there's always, we're asking them to do this and this and they're complying. But again, the bottom line, it still stinks. It's not a minor inconvenience. It's huge. It's really impacting on people's everyday lives. And it's just not getting any better. That can't, whatever system leads you to that outcome is not working.
No,
in my view.
and it hasn't done for 20 years.
No.
It's so difficult.
So do you know when the Senate Petitions Committee is due to report?
I did ask them that question, and they said they would consider the evidence and come back to us as soon as they can. I don't know how long that will be.
Yeah.
I hope it's before the end of the year, maybe, but I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, I know I've seen residents thanking you online on Facebook, but just a massive thank you for what you're doing, because it is making a difference. It's keeping us in the spotlight. It's making sure all of the ins and outs, as complicated and difficult as it is, are being scrutinised, and it desperately needs.
I'm doing it because it's unjust. We shouldn't be. And for my grandchildren, because we've got another 35 years of it if we don't stop it. I mean, the point I'd also like to make is that on the 19th of February, the full council passed a motion that said we'll tighten these controls, and if they continue to be non-compliant, we will get it shut.
And everybody voted in favour of that motion, as I remember.
Well, council, that time is now. That time is now 6 months, and it hasn't got any better, and we can prove it hasn't got any better. So I think I'm hoping the Senate will do something about that, but the Public Protection Office should start looking at an abatement notice.
And they do have the power.
They do, yeah. They danced around it, didn't they? Yeah.
They did. I mean, their argument is, the body that should do all the running with this is NRW, but the issue is NRW aren't doing the running with this. So in that scenario then, and this has happened with Wally's Quarry and other councils, isn't it? Councils have taken action where it constitutes a statutory nuisance. Mm-hmm. And I think, for one thing everybody can agree on is this is absolutely at that level where it's a statutory nuisance. So if NRW aren't going to take action, let's hope the Senedd do. We haven't seen the end of that process yet. We'll see the outcome of that. But then if not, I think the council have got to step up.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah. It's long overdue.
Well, we'll have you back on maybe the new year, Steve, and let's hope there's some
good news.
Yeah,
progress. I'm sure you won't. And I'm sure the council and NRW and the Senedd have got that message loud and clear as well.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks very much for inviting me in. Thank you.
Yeah.